Okay, today is Reflections and Symmetry, and go ahead and put your date in the upper right-hand corner of your paper. We're going to start talking about what is a reflection. A reflection is a transformation, it's a type of transformation, in which a figure is reflected or flipped over a line. And the line that's reflected or flipped over is called the line of reflection. I'm going to go ahead and change my paper here and pull out some coordinate grid paper. You can just draw a coordinate grid on your paper if you'd like to. And we're going to try out some problems. So I'm going to create a figure, and yours doesn't have to be exactly the same as mine, but just approximate. We've got A, B, and C. I'm going to go ahead and draw it in so it's a triangle. Now, if I told you that the line of reflection for this transformation I'm about to do is the y-axis. I want to draw this figure after I have reflected it, or done a reflection, over the y-axis. Where would it be? Well, that means that I'm going to be folding my paper along that line. You don't actually have to fold it, but think about like you're folding your paper along that line, and you want all these points to end up in the same position on the other side of the paper. So for example, C right now is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots from my y-axis. That means it's going to be in the same position over here. And we're going to label that C prime, of course, because it's the image. We're going to set up all the other dots. So A is going to be the same distance from the y-axis. That'll be my A prime. And B is going to be the same distance. And that'll be my B prime. Draw on the figure again. And notice that they should look pretty much the same. The one thing that's really changed is the order, in this case, because my figures are very similar, of the points, because we're now flipping it over, so C is going to be still the closest thing to the y-axis. So that was a line of reflection from the y-axis. Now, I'm going to take this figure this time, this one that I just drew, and I'm going to tell you the line of reflection is going to be the x-axis. So it's going to be a little bit different, but the process is very similar. So I'm going to be flipping it over the x-axis. Same thing, they're going to be the same distance from the x-axis on both sides. So B prime is currently, what, 4 spots up? So it's going to be 4 spots down from that line. And now I've already used A, and I've used A prime. So down here we're going to have what we call a double prime. Basically, this means you put 2 apostrophes instead of 1. So we're going to put like this B double prime. Same thing, I'm putting the rest of my figure, so I've got C, I'm going to bring it down, make it C double prime, and then A, of course. I'm going to draw on my figure. So I just did that reflection over the x-axis, so my line of reflection was the x-axis. Is your line of reflection always an axis? No. Oftentimes it'll just be a line that they will have drawn in for you perhaps and ask you to flip it over. But for right now, we're just going to hang out and stop there with just thinking about the easy ones, the x-axis and the y-axis. And you can try some harder ones a little bit later on. Another thing you're going to need to know for this section is you're going to have to remember what the different quadrants are. And this is important because we have covered this before, but you may have forgotten at this point. Quadrants of a coordinate grid. And we always write quadrants as Roman numerals. So this is quadrant 1, and then it goes counterclockwise around. So this is quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and then quadrant 4. And you may be asked to identify some of those different quadrants as to where the reflection ends up at, so you're going to want to know what they are. Last thing for today, I'll flip back to some normal paper, is going to be the line of symmetry. And the line of symmetry is a line that divides the figure into 2 parts that are reflections of each other. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a figure quick. And you'll have to excuse the fact that I'm freehanding my figure, so it's not going to be perfect, but we'll just pretend it is. So this is my perfect square. It's okay, just look at it with kind of your narrowed eyes and you can tell it's perfect. And I want to find some lines of reflection. A line of reflection divides it into two parts that are reflections of each other. Think about it as you have to be able to fold that figure in half, and it needs to match up perfectly across that line. So for example, if I were to fold right along that line, when they came together, those two sides, they'd be exactly the same. So that would be a line of symmetry. This little dotted line right here is one example of a line of symmetry. I could also fold diagonally across like that. If I folded that in half, it would just be a nice triangle, but it'd be the exact same triangle. So again, perfect line of symmetry. I could fold in half this way, or I could fold in half that way. And all of those would be considered lines of symmetry. So how many lines of symmetry does it have? Well, each of those counts one time. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have 4 lines of symmetry. You notice that there's still more lines over here, but it's all one line. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 lines of symmetry for that figure. Now, of course, you do not have to just squares. You can use any sort of figure, and we can try to find how many lines there are. Let's go and try it with kind of a diamond shape here. Oops, no, that's pretty terrible. Let's try that again really quick. Like that. Well, you have to pretend it's perfect. I want to go through and I want to draw in some lines again. Well, if I drew a line straight down the middle here, it's pretty easy to see if I reflected that, if these were perfectly drawn, that would be a line of reflection. Now that figure's pretty terrible. Let's go ahead and back up and we'll try that again. Make something a little more exotic looking. Okay. Sure, have an upside down kite. That'll work. So again, that middle line right there, obviously I folded in half. It looks a little more similar this time. A little bit more likely that it'd be a line of reflection if this figure was accurately drawn. And what if I drew a line like this? Well, this part doesn't really match the shape of this part. So this would not be a line of reflection. That's pretty much all you're doing, is identifying which ones are going to be places where you could fold across that line and it'd be the same, and places where you could not, to find some lines of symmetry. We'll do some more problems with that in class. So that's all I have for you today. Just remember those different words that we learned today, talking about line of reflection and finding a reflection, and the different quadrants, and I'll see you in class.